Hello, darlings. So, I actually watch a lot of YouTube videos. Sometimes they're just for fun and they don't really educate me, but oftentimes they are very educational. A lot of them are either little compilations or commencement speeches or just actual speeches or TED Talks from very successful people, interviews from entrepreneurs to fitness experts to successful actors to CEOs of great companies. Steve Jobs' commencement speech. I just watched quite a few other commencement speeches. Um, and not all of them are successful monetarily. Oftentimes that comes along with it, but oftentimes I respect them for other things outside of their success financially. And even if they didn't make any money, uh, I would still respect them. So you get the point. Not some of them are like fitness experts or not rich, but you get the point. Generally, they're entrepreneurs or people who have achieved what they wanted in life, what they wanted to do in life, um, and it's very much interesting because oftentimes it's a very tough market. Anyhow, a lot of times I would just with consuming all this information from all these videos, there'll be a connection where I just notice a very distinct similarity between two people when observing these interviews or speeches. Um, and this video is to remark on one of them. Now, there's hundreds of them that probably will never be documented, um, but uh, you as an audience have the potential, if you're watching this video, to go out there and make your own connections and realize, hey, maybe there is something in what they're saying based on the fact that this keeps propping up in successful people in different industries who don't even know about each other. Um, and if you guys want some suggestions from me, I do tweet out some of the content that I watch on my Twitter, twitter.com/willyouLaugh. I also tweet out some other stuff on my other Twitter, uh, WATEX, and some more unique stuff that's not on either of those on my Google Plus. Um, but if you're too lazy to do that, I can just throw out some names now. And again, it's just some of the stuff. So a lot of the stuff I never have the time to tweet. Sometimes, there's so too much stuff to do. Um, but I'm sure the best thing for you to do is to focus on what you want to learn and just search it on YouTube, search it on Google, and learn from there. You may be able to find content more suited to you rather than what interests me. Um, but I guarantee you there's free content out there that will just blow your mind from successful people in your area, whether it's knitting or fashion design or whatever it is that interests you. But just to throw out a few channels I think are worth looking at: London Real, um, what else? Charlie Rose, um, TED Talks, and then a lot of the others are just compilations by anonymous users of YouTube or commencement speeches. So you can check out the one by Steve Jobs. The one by Charlie Munger is a great one. But without further ado, let me talk to you about one connection I made. And again, I can't document all the hundreds out there, but it's just a great illustration. So this one is by Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is a comedian. He's a very successful actor. And I actually, a lot of these successful people, when you actually start researching them, you realize there's so much more to their story than just what meets the eye. It's not like they just became successful. A lot of them had to go through a lot of struggles. But more so than that, Jim Carrey, he was very unique in that if you watch one interview by Ellen DeGeneres, he reveals that he went through a lot of reading of self-help books, which I've done, not to the extent he's done. And he does one thing that is very recurrent in these self-help things is affirmations, and just like that's it's kind of like saying stuff every single day when you wake up, like I am awesome, I can achieve this, or more detailed affirmations. And he also did something called I don't know what it's called, but you write a check to yourself. It's not cashable, of course, but you write a check to yourself, um, and it's a goal for you to reach, and it may just be outside of your bounds of possibility or practicality, but it's something that it gives you the sense of the vibe of it's called um, imagining the wealth, or not imagining it, but pretending that you're wealthy before you're actually wealthy. And this can be applied to other things. If you don't want to be wealthy, if you want to, do something else like be first place in a race, you can walk through this process as well. And so what he did was he wrote a blank check to himself, um, and it was like $3 million, Jim Carrey. And that's one of those things I actually haven't done, but it's eerie because I read in this book, I think it was Michael Masterson. He did something very similar as well, and I'm sure there's other self-help books which is very similar. And they didn't have any money, but they wrote this check like $3 million, and they said they set themselves a time limit, and then they started working towards it, which is also very important, of at least attempting to make it there somehow. And lo and behold, once that 3 years or 5 years passed, they achieved it, $300,000 or whatever. In Jim Carrey's case, it was 3 million. Maybe it's 2 million. It was something million. Um, and there's other stuff that you can do. Like for Jim Carrey, what he did was he would drive around fancy neighborhoods with $1 million mansions and pretend that he lived in those mansions. And it's very interesting because today I actually watched a interview by Dan Pena. He's also very wealthy, um, and again it was through the London Real channel. And what he said was that he can um, what was the term? He when he was not wealthy, what he would do would be he would buy suits that he could not afford, that just to wear what wealthy people wore. And who knows what the actual mechanisms, psychological mechanisms are that are training you to that actually help you achieve wealth by doing this. But now that I think about it, more and more examples pop up. But he would wear wealthy clothing when he couldn't afford it, and he would go into mansions, and he would also go to dealerships and sit in very expensive cars and just smell the leather and pretend that he had this car, that he owned this car. I think it's just some sort of mechanism in your brain. It's like subconscious thing that just helps you along the path. And I like a lot of I guess dating coaches say, don't get caught up on the details on why it works, because it can be so complicated that it's just too hard to explain. It's too much psychological and mumbo jumbo scientific knowledge behind it that we may have not discovered yet. But just realize, that's how it works. And there's a lot of scientific examples. I actually learned about this from a video gamer called GBay99, who applies science and like philosophy and war tactics and all this stuff to this video game. But he cited a scientific study where I guess it was, I'm not sure if it was a case study, but they were trying to design like the best pipe that would work, and they would do like 10 variations of a pipe, and they just keep picking the best one from that and then doing variations on that. And after many iterations, you get this very detailed but very bizarre looking pipe with all these details in it, and eh, no one knew at all why this pipe worked, but they knew it worked the best. So it may be something similar to that vein. And he, of course, he applied it to the game he was playing, League of Legends. But I guess you get the point. So, yeah, and another example is Robert Kiyosaki. He would somewhat different, but he would set aside money he didn't have to use for real estate when he was in debt, when he decided to change his life with his girlfriend at the time, now his spouse. I don't really advise that, but it was a subconscious thing that worked for him. I don't really. I personally think it's mathematically better to pay off your debt, but for some people who are not, they can't. If it helps you subconsciously, I guess you can go for it. But I guess I've gone off on a tangent. What I want to tell you guys is the connection I made today. Jim Carrey did a commencement speech at like Maharaji University, far-fetched university I'd never heard of, but it's so amazing he did that thing. And one thing he said in it, and I advise you all to watch the whole commencement speech. He said a lot of ridiculous things that again correlate with a lot of things other people have said. And again, they don't always correlate. Not every successful person has all the same mentalities, but you would be surprised how similar they can be in certain areas. Oftentimes they can be very different as well. But he said something. He said this. He said, and I'm paraphrasing. What I've learned is that you have to tell the universe what you want, and then work towards that goal, and not worry about how you get there or how the universe helps you achieve that goal. And he just ended it like that. But the way he said it, it just almost implied that don't worry, in time you will achieve that goal, despite the fact that the universe may give you very bizarre twists and turns, and will get you to that goal in maybe a way you didn't expect. And it correlated a lot with what Will Smith said. Some person online, anonymous, he did this compilation of Will Smith inspirational interviews and segments from them. You could YouTube it. He says very similar stuff. He said, it's very simple. Decide what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and do it. That's it. Period. End of story. And again, as I'm saying it, you can almost sort of feel the energy coming off of what he said. He says it the way he says it is just, with classic Will Smith, full of energy, very distinct. I guess that's one way Will Smith can live longer vicariously, even if he dies, through the impact he makes on the world. But anyhow, I keep going on tangent. He also said something along the lines in this interview. He said this in an interview after he filmed and released I Am Legend, which was actually fairly recent. He said something along the lines of, the universe doesn't want to get in your way. It wants to part and go around you. So once you decide what you want, the universe will not push against you. It wants to go around you like water. And I don't want to get too philosophical and start quoting Bruce Lee and stuff. I'm not some genius or philosophical man. But it's very interesting. If I ever meet him, I really want to question him and ask him more about that, because I can't say I completely agree. But again, what I just watched with Jim Carrey sort of affirms that. But still, it's just like, I don't know. It's very interesting because it doesn't completely make sense to me there's that element of practicality in it where it's like, well, if you want to be like a top athlete and you're short and you can't, you want to be the best NBA player in the world, how is that going to work out? Um, you're not. How are you going to become the next Michael Jordan, or how are you going to be the uh, uh, high salary paying CEO when you have all these advantages against you? Or how are you going to be that celebrity or that actor or actress when there's all these hundreds of people competing against you to achieve that? There are obstacles that the universe sort of puts in front of you. And I don't know if, you know, that's what Will Smith is putting forth as the universe. But if that's the case, it seems like there's many obstacles that the universe is putting forth, not necessarily going around you. Um, but if we look at it from a more, you know, concrete uh, scenario that can be described, I do think that uh, at the end of the day, there is a limited supply out there, although that supply is increasing, and there is this whole somewhat mumbo jumbo philosophy that I don't necessarily disagree with of uh, a perspective of abundance, that there's infinite wealth for you to achieve, or infinite supply of spots, actors and actresses out there for everyone. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think this perspective and subconscious idea does help you achieve that and rise above your competition, as well as all this other stuff. Um, I do think that there is some element of competition and having some advantage over your competition. For Will Smith and Schwarzenegger, from what I've studied on them, it does come down to ridiculous hard work. Um, for Will Smith, sickening work ethic, um, putting in more hours than anyone else, so forth, and a lot of other factors like that, and actually working towards your goal. And again, it can get complicated if you explain it thoroughly. Like, oh well, there's also a factor of sticking to one specialized field. And sticking with it for thousands of hours for years to be the top at that field. But then when you break it down to a science, there's actually a whole TED talk that sort of refutes this whole idea of 10,000 hours that I watched. Um, Most of you guys do not have to achieve that level of finesse or excellence to get where you want in life. You don't need to spend 10,000 hours or 50 years of nonstop work, 20 hours a day in a specialized field to achieve that result. Sometimes you do if that's your goal, but oftentimes, you know, that sort of mentality is sort of myth in the fact that it's what you need to be number one in a competitive field of millions of competitors. On the flip side, though, if you want to be successful to a certain degree, not necessarily. But again, this is all just theory. But again, it's just the whole point of this video was just to remark on a connection I made, and it is very interesting what Jim Carrey has to say on the subject. If you watch his whole commencement speech, he does say a lot of things that really do stick out. And I think, again, if you look at it from I hate to say the word, but practical standpoint, I do think that all this mumbo jumbo of pursuing your passion, and again, check out my blog, which again, all the links are in the description. I did a whole article on this that really details it down. There's so much to it. This whole thing, I don't think the whole practicality behind it really hinges on what sort of economy and society and time period you're brought up in, and the current advances in technology, history. All these things have to sort of come together to provide you with an environment where you can do that. I do think that right now we are living in a society where, um, more often than not, especially if you're living in a first world country, you have so much potential and more options than you think are available, and those people don't really have excuses that they put forth like, oh, well, it's more practical in this economy to try doing this than that. I don't think that's completely the truth. um, and I'm saying that, realizing that there are other economies and societies where, based on how it's structured, um, your choices are farmer or die from starvation or something, to simplify things. Again, I'm not some economist or someone who understands a whole lot about this, but that's just my theory behind it. But long story short, I do think that if you're living in this time and age, you have a lot more options than you believe. And Jim Carrey, he says how, one of his whole ideas is that he keeps putting forth through these videos of him online, is in these interviews, is that I'm living proof. There's this great quote he says in this commencement speech. I found out about this commencement speech, ironically enough, and it's funny how a lot of this stuff comes from random stuff I found online. Um, what was it? I was watching a music video by a rapper, a YouTube rapper. He's an Asian man. I forgot his name. Uh, but he did this music video. Uh, Again, the video is called Hoes and Gold, I believe. Maybe it was Bitches and Hoe. No. Excuse my cursing, but the video was like Bitches and Gold. And again, that's just so the sort of artist he was. But anyhow, he quoted this. Actually, it was the direct audio quote of Jim Carrey saying this at the end of this video. The video was somewhat bizarre. It was also trying to be very somewhat philosophical. I can't say I liked it, hated it. I don't want to give my review on that. But the point is, found Jim Carrey's thing from that, and it was a great commencement speech. And in it, he said a few interesting things. One was that, what was it? A lot of people live in fear disguised as practicality. I am living proof that you do not have to do that. You can do what you want to do. So there it is. I guess I'm thinking he's applying it to occupation. But again, I don't want to open up a can of worms that's more complicated than you think. Again, check my article on my blog. There is some sort of correlation. We don't want to ascribe it to causation, but ever since the term started appearing in the 1980s, pursue the job you love, and again, also populated by significant figures like Warren Buffett, who's always telling you this. There's a inverse correlation to there's a study that did this. They researched all the times the phrase showed up in books, and obviously it increases exponentially starting in the 1980s. But then you see a similar graph of job satisfaction, and that just plummets from the 1980s since that term surface. But so again, you don't want to apply causation or correlation, but it is a very interesting thing. Perhaps there's more to it than that. And again, I've done a lot of studying about this topic, from books to a lot of videos online. Again, check my article. Again, I want to recommend Larry Smith. He does a lot of great videos on the topic, gives you a lot of new perspectives on the topic. He says stuff like that really just makes you think like, do you want to be that guy who's just doing a job that you hate, um, or thinking what you could have done in its place? And then Jim Carrey says a lot of good stuff about it too. How about his father could have been an amazing comedian, but he chose to be more practical, became an accountant, and then lost his job due to the economy. And he realized that what he doesn't want to do is what his father did, which was fail at something he didn't want to do anyways. Um, and from that, I'm just thinking like, if that's the case, I might as well fail doing something I want to do rather than fail at doing something I don't want to do. But again, there's more to it than that. Um, and there's another side to the picture is all the there's the Amish who, as Ty Lopez says, he lived with the Amish for a few years. Ty Lopez is a entrepreneur. Um, Ty Lopez, he lived with the Amish for a few years. The Amish are a group of people who they refute technology and they choose to live how what most of us lived 150 years ago, as farmers, making our own food, making our own livelihood, no television, no electricity, just standard living. And from what he says, I don't know if it's true, he says that the depression rate for the Amish is a quarter of what it is for modern society. The Amish are still around right now, living a life without electricity, without film technology, and I would, just taking that at face value, if it's true or not, I think it's probably true. I affirm that, and that's a lifestyle where you're not given all these options of, oh, you can do this and this and this, and all this stuff, and bombarding you with stuff. And again, there's studies done showing you that